There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamma Mia podcast.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. From Mamma Mia, I'm Mia Friedman and you're listening to No Filter. The phrase "the teacher's pet" was never a positive one. But in the past few years since the podcast by that name was released, the teacher's pet has become synonymous with true crime and one woman, Lynette Dawson. She was just 33 years old when she went missing from her home in Sydney's Northern Beaches in 1982. Her husband, Chris Dawson, was a charismatic footy player and a PE teacher at the local high school, and he didn't report Lynette missing for 6 weeks. Eventually, he told police that she'd called him during that time and explained that she needed some time away from him and their 2 little daughters. The police believed him, and Lynette was never seen again. Her body has never been found. And today we're going to hear from one of those little girls that Lynette Dawson never left behind. Her name is Shanelle Dawson. The details of what happened between the day Shanelle's mum disappeared and the past few years when we learned finally and conclusively that Chris Dawson murdered his wife, Lynette, so that he could move his 16-year-old girlfriend into the family home. These details are well known if you've listened to the Teacher's Pet podcast. Now, we can only refer to this 16-year-old as J or JC because in 2023, Chris Dawson was also found guilty not just of the murder of his wife, Lynette, but of unlawful sexual activity with J because she was one of his underage students at the time their sexual relationship started. They went on to get married after he moved her into the family home just 2 days after Lynette supposedly disappeared. They went on to be married and have a daughter together. Now, no one would know the name Lynette Dawson. Chris Dawson wouldn't be sitting in jail if it wasn't for the work of one man, an investigative journalist with The Australian called Hedley Thomas. In 2018, he released the Teacher's Pet podcast, and it sparked an investigation, a cold case file was reopened, and more than 40 years after Lynette Dawson disappeared, Chris Dawson was convicted of murder. There was no physical evidence. It was all circumstantial, which is rare for a guilty verdict in a murder case. A judge found that Chris Dawson was so infatuated with Jay, so scared of losing her, and so unwilling to pay money in a financial settlement if he were to just, divorce his wife instead of murdering her. He decided she needed to be removed permanently. As a consequence, he will spend the rest of his life in jail. Shanelle was just 4 years old when her mum disappeared, and she spent most of her life looking for answers. It wasn't until she was a lot older that she realised what had happened in the most unexpected way. Last year, in court, she bravely delivered her victim impact statement, where she stood up, locked eyes with her father, and here's a little bit of what she said to him.
The fact that the father I love and trusted is capable of such a heart-wrenchingly selfish, brutal and misogynistic act. She's no longer any use to you, a hindrance with no value. You can coldly dispose of her in such utter disrespect. Why didn't you just divorce her? Let those who love and needed her keep her? Because of money? For God's sake.
Shanelle Dawson doesn't feature that much in the Teacher's Pet podcast. When I mentioned to people that I was interviewing her, everyone wanted to know what she was like, what her story was, how she found out about her dad, whether she speaks to her sister, who was 2 when their mum went away, whether her father has ever admitted to her what he did, and whether she's seen him since that day in court. She's written a book about this very surreal experience called My Mother's Eyes, and she sat down with me in the No Filter studio here at Mamma Mia to have a conversation about her mum, her dad, and her life. I wanted to congratulate you for the book, but that sounds like a weird thing to say when you've written a book about your father murdering your mother. What was the process of writing it like?
Thank you for having that sensitivity too, because I'm not there at celebrating. Some of my friends are wanting to celebrate with me and I'm not quite at that point. The process of writing the book was, I wouldn't even call it cathartic because I haven't felt the healing from it yet, but it was re-traumatizing actually, to be honest, but it also felt like it was something I needed to do and I felt really compelled and the words would flow. So I felt right. And when I would read my journals, I could feel which parts felt like they were meant to be in there.
Yeah. Did you feel your mum with you when you were writing it ever?
I would call on her and ask her to be with me, and I would ask her if there was things in there that she wanted not to be in there or if there were things she wanted me to put in. A lot of it's about me and my life and the absence of her more than her because I don't remember her enough to really write from her perspective.
Did you have to steel yourself? Like, was it something when you wrote it, the experience of writing it, did it make you feel close to her or was it a level of grief that you hadn't unlocked before?
I feel like it was levels of grief I had unlocked. I didn't want to have to go there again and yet I felt like I needed to. And that's this idea that if you keep triggering and triggering yourself, it gets lesser and lesser, which wasn't my truth. I found that it still impacted me as equally. It wasn't so much stealing myself. It was because I homeschool my daughter as well. So I had very little windows of opportunity to write. So I kind of just had to. And I, didn't see friends. I didn't walk on the beach for the last bit, especially. In the beginning, I was trying to still do all those things that I knew I needed to do for myself. But in the end, there just wasn't time. It was either write or take a walk on the beach. So it was right. And it was very much like I was drowning, but I knew that I would get through it and I was determined that I would finish this project. I felt like it was my chance to really get it out of me.
Like an exorcism a little bit?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe in shamanic terms, more like a soul retrieval.
That sounds better. I like that more. Do you have memories of your mum?
No, sadly. I can feel her essence.
What does that feel like?
She comes in a sort of state of grace. I'm sure she probably does disapprove sometimes of my choices, but she reminds me to soften into mine. And her beautiful friend Anna has been having lots of dreams with her, which is really beautiful, with me and my daughter as well. And in the dreams, she's saying how proud she is of us and wrapped her angel wings around me, and really beautiful, profound dreams. So it's kind of beautiful that they're coming through her friend who loves her so much as well.
Every woman, when she becomes a mother, if she becomes a mother, and every man maybe when they become a dad, but has a renewed idea about their own mother. They see their relationship with their mother and they understand it. It almost feels like an unlocking of an understanding. It can often be a very emotional time if your mother's not around or if she's estranged. Tell me about when you had your little girl and even when you were pregnant with her.
It definitely brought it home to me in ways. The absence of the mother was not just my own anymore. It definitely then extended to my daughter, who now doesn't have her grandmother. And I certainly grieve for her for that. And I often say to her, oh, Nana Lynn would have loved you. She would be so proud of you, and I'm proud of you. And my daughter loves to hear that. And it just, from me having never spoken about our mum growing up, I know how important it is to kind of fill in those gaps.
When you picture your mum, she died at 33, which is younger than you are now. What does she look like in your mind? Is she frozen in time at what age?
I guess for me it is frozen in time at the age that she passed, because that's where I've seen the photos of her holding me and the love on her face. So yeah, that's when I think of her, because for me, if I think of her, marrying my dad, and there's some beautiful photos of her when she's younger too, and she looks so happy, but there's more grief in my heart to see those ones and go, oh, not knowing what's about to unfold for her,
When you were very little, you were only 4.5 when she was killed, and your father moved his girlfriend, who was 16 years old, a schoolgirl, into your house. Do you remember that time? And what do you remember of it?
I remember, I believe it's the time my dad and Jay were hiding maybe at my auntie and uncle's house. And I recall sort of confusion. I can remember what it felt like as a child. And obviously I didn't know what was going on. I remember Dad and Jay saying they had to wait till she turned 18 to get married. We're reported as saying that my nana wrote in her diaries that we said, Mum's not our real mum anymore. Jay's our real mum now.
Because that must have been what you were told.
Yeah. It was my father saying that. And it's like, how can you tell your children stuff like that? You know, those kinds of actions are where I think he must be a narcissist.
Well, he is a murderer.
I know.
So being a narcissist is sort of on the scale of terrible things that he is.
Yeah, I understand.
It wouldn't be that surprising, would it? His cruelty and his callousness towards you and your sister.
I guess so. But because I hadn't experienced his callousness towards us so blatantly, more underhanded in those ways, which is part of when the illusion started to dispel. I think because I still hoped that the actual murder was an accident, I understand that it is believed that it was premeditated, and that's next level heartbreaking.
Mm. What were you told about where she was? Do you even remember? You were so little.
Yeah, well, I must have been told that she went off, you know, with the religious sex. And I was always drawn to sort of explore different spiritualities. And I did write about in my book that I went to a Krishna temple and was finding myself at, 19 years of age or something, looking at the women's faces, wondering if my mum was there. And I could totally have imagined her going somewhere and just becoming anonymous and changing her name. So I must have been told that version at one point.
How did he speak about your mum? Did he and Jay, your uncle and your father's side of the family, did they speak about your mum?
No, not much at all. There was definitely, if anybody did mention her, an uncomfortable silence. He definitely spoke about her in ways that were definitely not honouring. And I look back now and I believe very much he was being manipulative. And I believe he kind of warped my sister's mind almost against her. I feel like almost making out that my sister wasn't as loved as I was, which I know is bullshit.
So he was very deliberate in corrupting your memory of her and who she was to you. So
I believe so, but very subtly and not very frequently throughout the years. And so he would suggest that one of the problems they had with why their marriage dissolved was that she loved the children at the childcare centre more than she loved her own or something, or she said she felt they needed her more. And whether or not she really said that, I don't know, but I doubt it. And I doubt that she said it in the context that he shared it.
He worked very deliberately to sully her memory and create a picture of a woman who might just walk out on her family because she didn't love her little girls. Because he had to get you to believe that bullshit story.
Yeah, I do think on some level he believed it himself.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. He stood in front of me at a family picnic and I told him that I remembered seeing his hands around her neck. And I said, don't worry, I'm not going to tell anyone. I don't know why I said that.
How old were you?
This was fairly recently, like one of the last conversations I had with him. And there's something, is it called Stockholm Syndrome?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
when you become attached to your captor, basically.
Yeah, or almost feel a sense of loyalty to them or something. So I wonder if it was something like that. But for some reason I said that to him when there was no one else right there. And then he said, I swear to you, I never, ever hurt your mum. And when someone lies to me or when someone's being insincere, I can feel it in my gut. I get this clenching feeling. And I didn't get that with him. And it really confused me. At this point, it wasn't, the trial hadn't gone ahead or anything. He hadn't been arrested. I still kind of held this little bit of hope that maybe it wasn't true, that it just appeared that way, or that, I don't know. I know that sounds insane and delusional to some people, but.
Not at all, because it's like hoping for the justice of him being convicted, but also that completely closes the door to any magical thinking about, well, maybe she is alive somewhere and maybe there's still the possibility of me seeing her again.
Yeah, and maybe he didn't murder her and he's not really.
Maybe I won't have to also lose my father and confirm the death of my mother in that same moment.
Yeah.
I want to ask When you were little, did you and your sister talk secretly about your mum?
I don't remember doing that, no. It was very much sort of a taboo. We didn't go there. And my sister, maybe because she was younger, just didn't really, once she was older, didn't really like talking about her. And we're quite different in that way. She felt like I was dwelling on the past, and she has a way of kind of getting on with her life and not feeling things in the same way I do. She would think I would dwell, and I would think that she doesn't deal.
Sisters, man.
Yeah, it's amazing how you can be so different from the same mother and father.
Yeah.
So sadly, we didn't have that as
a shared bond together.
Yeah.
Was Jay a mother figure? I mean, she'd been your babysitter. She was 16 years old. She could have just been your older sister. Did you have to call her mum?
We did call her mum initially, and I remember at some point, still very early on, where we were told we were not to call her mum anymore, but to go back to calling her Jay by her full name.
She and your father had more kids, one more child?
One more child, yeah.
How old were you then, and how did that change the family dynamic?
I can't remember how old we were. I think she was about 5 when Jay left, and we were about 12, so that would have made me about 7.
So a few years after. It's funny, you said before your mum went away, so I'm inclined to say your mum went away because it sounds so jarring and shocking to say when your mum was murdered.
Yeah.
Do you still refer to it as when she went away?
No, I referred to that from the perspective of Jay in potentially believing that is the story of what happened in moving in with this man, because I can't imagine that you would want to move in with a man who had murdered his wife, right?
No, but when you talk about it, even earlier, you said when she went away.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you talk about it now or refer to that time or what happened, what words do you use? It might seem like a very specific question, but I'm just interested.
Yeah, I don't tend to say when she was murdered because that's just a bit too brutal for me. It kind of hurts my heart a bit to say.
I was going to say, what should I say? Because I now want to say when she went away.
I guess I say disappeared because that's what it felt like.
Yeah,
even though she technically didn't disappear.
And you still don't know where she is. So
yeah.
After she disappeared, it was a few years later, your father and Jay had a baby. How did that change the family dynamics then?
So she was pregnant when we moved up to Queensland. And then once we got to Queensland, I feel like Jay became distant.
Your relationship with her changed?
Yeah, I feel like it changed before her daughter was born. She says that once her own daughter was born, it increased her feelings of distance towards us. And those are her own words. And she couldn't love us like she loved her own child. But I've nannied for other families and, sure, you might not love them in the same way that you love your own child, but you can still be kind. And she was not.
Did you have any kind of mother figure? Did you have any sort of female soft place, like your maternal grandmother?
My mum's mum was definitely a soft place. Unfortunately, we didn't see her very often. So I think probably once a year or something we maybe visited her. And
was that a place where you could talk about your mum, or when she would talk about your mum?
We would talk about my mum. And I think for me, because I didn't really fully comprehend why it would make her so sad, because in my little delusional world, my mum was still alive in the world somewhere and we would still see her again. I could understand why she was sad. But I didn't understand the full extent of her grief. And, now, those are through the eyes of a child. Now I'm like, of course, she was massively grieving her child. It's not natural for a parent to lose their child,
After the break, I speak to Shanelle about the psychics that she saw and how they seemed to know some of the truth about what had happened to her mother and how she reacted when they told her. She also told me how her own daughter found out about what had happened to her grandmother. Stay with us. A lot of kids, when they're growing up and they're having bad times with their parents, fantasize that they're adopted and that their real mum might come and save them one day, or their real dad.
Oh, okay.
You were told and you believed that your mum was out there in the world. Did you hold out hope that one day she'd come get you?
I really, truly believed I would definitely see her again one day, yeah. I had told myself I believed that she had had either a mental breakdown or somehow lost memory and had amnesia or something like that and, must have forgotten she had children in the world because I couldn't equate this beautiful, loving mother figure with someone who had abandoned her children.
Mm.
So for me, there had to be some valid excuse and reason for it, but it certainly wasn't what actually happened for a long time.
How old were you when you started to think that her disappearance might not have been what you were told?
So there was a psychic reading I received when I lived in Hawaii, which was 2009.
How old were you then?
Someone asked me last night.
I know,
how old I was.
maths. But like in your 30s.
So I was
you were
32.
So it hadn't occurred to you until then?
Yeah. Yeah. And other psychic readings I'd had, I think there was one in particular where the woman said, I see someone in your family going to jail for a very long time. I put this in my book, I think. Do you know who that might be? And I went, no, I have no idea. And it really perplexed me because from my perspective, my family were all very much goody two-shoes. There's no drugs, there's no armed robbery, there's no guns, there's no, from my perspective at that time, I really couldn't see who it would be. And I think once she heard that, then she didn't want to be the one, this is just my perception now, to sort of tell me what she could see. And she said, well, your mum's living in New Zealand and has a new family. And I remember that not feeling right and didn't want to be found was the other thing she said. So that caused all this grief. But I look back now and I feel like that feeling was that feeling of knowing that's not actually the truth.
So you think she knew what happened because she saw the jail part, but then that's a big thing to say, so she deliberately misled you?
I think so.
Wow.
Because I think as a reader, you would want to be really, really certain about how you're
it's a big responsibility, but also to tell someone a lie that's the opposite of what you have seen.
Yeah. Many readers have said, they're not showing me, I can't see.
Really?
Yeah.
So you went seeking it.
Oh,
you went
regularly.
seeking answers from psychics about your mum.
Yeah.
What would you say? Would you say, I'm looking for my mum, or you'd go, I'm not going to say anything and just see what they tell me?
No, I'd usually say, my mum has been missing since I was 4. Can you please tell me what you get about that?
So after that time, you were told by that psychic that someone would be in jail for a really long time.
Yeah.
That obviously planted a seed.
Not so much. So, sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent. So going back to the psychic who gave me a reading in Hawaii, she said, I can see the person who murdered your mum. She said, he looks like a bikie. If you send me a photo of your dad, I can tell you if that's who I'm seeing.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. And I somehow managed to completely block that reading out and pretend that I hadn't heard that information. So that when it came to 2010 and this was a friend of mine, not actually doing a psychic reading, who said, I showed her a photo of my mum and she immediately felt like she was being strangled, and then received some information she believed was channeled from my mum. And that was when I heard it for the first time in my conscious mind and could feel the truth of it. And I could feel I was still resisting and saying, no, that's not true. She's still alive. No, you must be wrong, kind of thing. But then when I sat with it and I kind of let down all these defenses that I'd carried around for so long, and I could feel the truth of it in my bones, in my body, in my inner knowing. It was quite profound, quite beautiful in that the abandonment issues I had felt around a mum abandoning us dissolved. But then this massive gaping wound on the masculine side was like, oh, okay, now we got some work to do there.
Who was the first person that you told?
So at the time I was living and working on a boat. So I was over in Darwin, so I didn't have friends around me or anyone that I knew except for that one friend that I was catching up with. Who was the first person I told? I think it would have been my mum's family when we finished up on the West Coast. And I bought a car and drove back across to the East Coast and went to visit them and told them I believe my dad murdered my mum.
What was their reaction?
Their shoulders just dropped in massive relief, I think. And they had believed it for quite a long time and had very respectfully refrained from speaking that to me and my sister. And they said it was twofold. It was one, they wanted us to have our own beliefs and conclusion. They didn't want to be the ones to take our father away from us, but they also didn't want us to cut them out of their lives because, we were their last link to my beautiful mum. So
when did you tell your sister?
I actually didn't tell my sister. We came close to having the conversation. And like I say in my book, there just always seemed to be an engagement, a wedding, someone's birthday. And I just didn't want to be the person that ruined that occasion, you know?
Yeah. It's pretty heavy news to drop.
Yeah. And her and I didn't have that kind of connection where we could talk about that kind of thing. And I don't know why she said this. We're in a kitchen and she said, I know our father didn't murder our mum. And I don't know if she was speaking to me in a way because she knew that I believed he did. And I took a deep breath. I said to myself, is this it? Am I going to say it? And I looked at her and I think I just gave her a kind of a grimace. And I think that was my way of telling her that I believed he did without actually saying it. I don't know why I didn't just say to her. I think I was just really scared of losing her.
Yeah,
So
you'd already lost so much.
Yeah, and I was being quite passive in it, I guess. And I sort of regret that now. I do wish I'd been more upfront and just spoken with her about it because the consequences were that I lost her anyway. So.
Have you spoken about it since?
No, she hasn't spoken to me since I did the 60 Minutes interview. And again, if I had spoken to her, maybe she wouldn't have felt blindsided. Maybe she feels betrayed. I have no idea. I don't know if it's because I believe something different to what she believes or if she doesn't like the way I handled it or...
The 60 Minutes interview was only, a year or so ago?
I've done 2. So the first one was 2018, I think, or 19.
So that was still well after The Teacher's Pet had started.
Yeah, it was just a sort of the tail end of that first chunk of it, I guess.
So when that all first happened and the story became very public, what was the conversation within your family between you and your sister and your father and his third wife?
There wasn't really any.
How did you all find out that a podcast was being made?
So I found out through my mum's side of the family when they contacted me and said there's this man, Hedley Thomas, who had done a newspaper article back in, I don't remember what year now, quite a long time ago. I think he said 17 years prior or something. And he would like to do a podcast. And I didn't even know what a podcast was. I'm really not, I don't have a TV and things like that. I don't.
You're a little bit off grid.
I'm very off grid, yeah. Well, not super. I'm mostly off grid. They said, and he would like to interview the family and we've agreed and wondering if you would be interested. I think I said, let me sit with it or something. And I felt that I needed to for my mum.
You'd already come to the understanding in your heart that that's what had happened.
Yeah.
So did you talk to your sister? Did you talk to your father? Did you ever confront him?
I didn't confront him at that time. I had this internal struggle of how to even go there. And I wrote multiple letters to him, which I never gave to him. And I don't know, maybe things would be a bit different with my sister had I done that. But I did tell them I was going to be in the podcast. I knew they wouldn't be happy about it. But I also think my dad couldn't kick up too much of a stink if he was still pretending he had nothing to do with it. It's like, well, why would it matter if I did? I was really clear that I wasn't going on the podcast to call out my father or to say what I believed about his innocence or lack of. Yeah, I just felt like I actually sometimes feel a little bit guilty. I didn't do more to try to bring the truth to light for my mum, but I also forgive myself because it was the best I could do at the time.
Oh, man, that's a big piece of baggage to carry around, Shanelle. I hope you've put that down.
Yeah, I've got enough.
You've got enough.
Yeah.
I've interviewed people before who've tragically lost 2 people in the same accident or crime. And I've asked them about how they, when something happens quite suddenly, how do you grieve for 2 different people at the same time? Because even just grieving for one is massive.
Yeah.
In that moment when the psychic said that to you and you suddenly went, oh, you immediately had 2 people to grieve for. You had a third thing, which is the release of that abandonment that you'd felt from your mum, but it locked off any possibility that she was still alive. So you had her to grieve for. And was it a grief that you had for your father at the same time? And how did you unscramble that egg, that horrible toxic egg of grief?
I'm not sure that I've completely unscrambled it yet, but it was massive. It was a massive grief for him and the person I thought he was. And I could then, in hindsight, start to see some of the cracks that had presented, like very, very minuscule ones throughout years.
What kind of things did you remember?
I remembered a moment when I was driving with my dad and I was about 14 and I don't even know what we were talking about. And I would sometimes ask questions about my mum. Especially once I got older, I wasn't going to be intimidated by the I knew it was uncomfortable, but there's this other part of me that's like, fuck you, I'm going to ask it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that would get this weird reaction from my sister, like I was the bad guy. It was really interesting. I look back and I'm like, wow, those are some interesting dynamics. A psychologist could really pick that apart.
Absolutely.
So I don't know what we're talking about. I probably asked a question about my mum, but he said, it's a shame your mother let herself go. She had such a pretty face.
Oh, my God. So he was basically calling her fat.
Yeah, and because she had children. I remember at the time, like I didn't have any idea of my father's involvement, but it gave me this weird, creepy feeling and sort of the budding feminist in me. And I was like, oh, there's something really wrong there. Yeah. But I sort of packed it away, or, shoved it away like I did just to sort of survive and get through life with my dad. But years later, I'd remember that moment and go, yeah, that's fucked.
Mm. Your sister has chosen, and your father's family, including his twin brother, all his family, have chosen to believe him.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of magical thinking do you think is involved after all the evidence, after the conviction, after the judge's, verdict and the statement that was really detailed about how he came to his conclusion, the sentencing, the second trial where he was found guilty of carnal knowledge, which is essentially having sex with someone underage and grooming them, which was Jay. What's your understanding of their magical thinking?
I can't speak for their thinking post all of that. I do kind of get it pre all of that because if you know my dad, he does come across, and you hear this so often with people who have done things like this, as charming and funny. He was moody, but he never, ever hit me and my sister. We hadn't seen any physical abuse firsthand. I think probably we heard a lot of arguing with Jay, but I don't recall ever seeing him hit Jay or anything. And I'm not saying that didn't happen, but because we hadn't witnessed that, our dad was a good guy and we loved our dad. And I can see why people wouldn't want to believe that. And denial can be so strong. Even me, who was open to the possibility that something wayward might have happened, I still held on to this belief that maybe it wasn't him, which sounds crazy. But so I can understand their complete oblivion. Is that the right word? Mm-hmm. I also think it's in part manipulation on his part. And he did seem to keep all the evidence away from them. They're intelligent, educated people. I don't know how much they went out. It was almost like it was disloyal to listen to the podcast or to any news that might suggest he had anything to do with it. And it's sort of like, well, when there's multiple people saying they witnessed bruises on my mum, it's not just one person. How can you say they're all lying? So I don't understand it really.
But you're right. If you're not exposed to that information, you don't know what you don't know. So you don't have to make a judgment because all of those people, including and especially your sister, were very invested in him not doing it.
Yeah, very much so.
Now, before your father was sentenced to life in jail last year, you read a 12-minute long victim impact statement and you've said that it was one of the most traumatic things you've ever had to do. I'm not surprised. I just want to play a little bit of the audio from that day in court.
The night you removed our mother from our lives was the night you destroyed my sense of safety and belonging in this world for many decades to come. Almost all of the love, nurturing and kindness vanished from my life. Because of your selfish actions, we will never see her again. We will never hear her tell us she loves us, feel her hold us, or hear her laugh. There are not enough words in the English language to describe the impact of 41 years of deceit, trauma, being silenced and gaslighted, the absence of a loving mother, grandmother, abusive, unloving replacements, emotional and psychological abuse. The fact that the father I love and trusted is capable of such a heart-wrenchingly selfish, brutal and misogynistic act. She's no longer any use to you, a hindrance with no value. You can coldly dispose of her in such utter disrespect. Why didn't you just divorce her? Let those who love and needed her keep her? Because of money? For God's sake. The way you made her invisible and didn't keep her memory alive for her children, rarely spoke of her, and when you did, it was with disdain or disrespect. As a direct result of your actions, I've not only lost my adoring, kind, wonderful and beautiful mother, but I've lost my father too. I've lost the sense of protection you were supposed to provide. I've lost at times the belief that there are good men in the world. It has had a significant impact on my psychological and emotional well-being, and trying to integrate how on earth the father I love and trusted is capable of such a horrific act of violence against a woman he supposedly loved, the mother of his children. I've also lost my sister, other siblings, cousins, and my beautiful nieces. I've lost any remnants of belonging to that immediate family since I came into the remembering that it was you who murdered my mother.
Oh, man. Shanelle, how did you write that, and how on earth did you prepare for that day in court?
With a lot of panic attacks. When I was writing it, it would just come to me and I would just quickly grab pen and paper. I write journals, so I always sort of have a journal at hand. But it would just kind of come to me, and sometimes it was coming in the middle of the night or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would just write whatever came. And it's like it would come and then that was it. It would stop and I'd roll over and go back to sleep or do whatever I was doing. For me, it felt complete when I'd done it, kind of thing. And I just felt that it was the best opportunity for me to be able to speak it to him in person, and he had to listen. Well, he didn't have to, but he couldn't respond. He couldn't argue.
And he couldn't walk away.
He couldn't walk away. He couldn't manipulate me and try to change the version of events in my story. And he was listening because he was shaking his head ever slightly a couple of times. So
he was still trying to deny your truth.
Yeah. And in those moments, I wanted to say, you don't fucking agree with that statement? And I was like, I wonder if the judge would call me out. You're probably not allowed to swear in court, I'm guessing.
Well, I was going to ask, when you write a victim impact statement, are you given any guidelines? I mean, you don't have to do it, do you? It's up to you.
It's totally if you want to. And you also have the option of it not being read in court and just being read by the judge. Mm-hmm. You also have the option of someone else reading it for you.
Wow. How did you decide? Because that is a brave move.
Thank you.
You chose the hardest option.
I did. And I knew it would have been easy to have someone else do it, but I also felt like it was the greatest opportunity to call back my power that I felt had been taken. It was probably potentially the last chance I'd have to sit in front of my father and actually have a conversation with him, because he may or may not choose to see me if I ever went to see him in jail, which I don't know if I ever do want to. It was like I felt like I knew I needed to. Again, a soul retrieval of sorts.
I love that expression. At the end of it, what happened in the courtroom? How did you feel? What did everyone do? Are they allowed to clap? I would have clapped.
Oh, thank you. I actually have no recollection. So I didn't even know if I was going to make it because I was such a mess. And I was trying to still be a good mom, obviously, and give my child presents and not have her feel unsafe in the world. But it wasn't until I think 2 days before that I was like, okay, I'm going to do it in person. And they bought my ticket sort of 2 days before, and I went the day before. And it's kind of all a blur, really. Yeah, I had this awareness of him and the fluorescent lights kind of buzzing, and there were people and there was love and support for me. But they kind of faded into the distance, and it was just him. And I didn't even remember to address the judge or anything like that. If I meant to, I don't know. No one told me.
I don't think you're going to get in trouble.
No, I think he understands.
Yeah.
I think they give a bit of leeway to people
Just a
who are
little
in
bit.
heightened emotional states.
Who else was there around him? Because it's not just him you're estranged from, it's also other people in your family. Who was there supporting him on that day?
No one that I'm aware of. There may have been someone, but there was no immediate family, which surprised me. I had expected and thought I would be facing them as well. My dad's barrister, Greg Walsh, came and told me that the Dawson family weren't going to be there. And I thanked him for letting me know that. He would have known that would have reduced my anxiety somewhat. So,
why do you think they weren't there?
I don't know. I actually found it quite fascinating that none of them were there throughout the trial except for his brother, who's the lawyer.
His brother was his lawyer.
No, he is a lawyer.
Oh, he is a lawyer.
Yeah.
His twin brother?
No, not his twin brother.
His other brother.
One of his older brothers. He's got two older brothers.
And his twin.
And a sister, yeah, and his twin. So he was there on the sidelines a lot and, intervening where he was allowed to, I guess.
Shanelle, just finally, I was going to ask you about two things. Are you going to visit your dad in prison?
I'm not sure. It hadn't actually occurred to me. It was actually my daughter who said, can I go and visit my grandfather in jail? And I went, oh, I hadn't even considered that. And I sat with it. And I said to her, not while you're young. It's not a nice place for a little girl. If you really feel that you want to and need to, then I'll go with you when you're a bit older.
Did she have a relationship with him ever? Did she know him as her granddad?
She did. And that was another thing that weighed on my decision to at some point dissolve my relationship with him and not wanting her to be too bonded to where she felt significant loss. Such mixed feelings,
Of course.
wanting her to have that, but knowing that it wasn't true was an illusion. So
It's a big story to tell a little girl.
yeah.
What's the story that you told her?
Well, I didn't tell her initially. And so for the year we were in Hervey Bay, we actually did have a TV for the first time. She didn't have any for the first 3.5 years of her life either. And she would go, look, it's your mum. Look, it's your dad. And I'd go, yeah, come on, time for a bath, and try to be all like, la, la, la. And she, I think because she is autistic, she didn't really quite get what was going on for the next few years either.
Do you mean she'd sort of point on the TV?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
okay.
Or on, we're walking past a newsstand and it would be on a
Oh,
newspaper or a magazine or something, and she'd say, oh, look, and I'd be, yeah. Yeah.
Off we go.
Yeah. And
Yeah, wow.
she did start reading quite young, but she still didn't know what the word murder meant or anything like that. So I don't recall her asking me, but it was actually her little friend that told her about just last year, I think. I know the truth of what happened. It was interesting because he actually told her. He was the one that told her the Easter Bunny and Santa and Tooth Fairy weren't real, but I didn't.
What a little bugger.
I know. But, I don't think he knew the consequences. I don't think he meant bad. It was more like, I know a secret. But I hadn't pretended much with those things anyway because I can't lie to my child. I used to just leave a present at the door and pretend it was Santa but not say it was Santa. Like she would just assume. And I didn't want Santa to get the credit for the good presents anyway.
That's a fair point.
And it just made no sense to me that a strange man that comes into your house in the middle of the night.
Down the chimney. It's kind of creepy, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, so it was him that ended up telling her the
Did she have a
truth.
lot of questions to you afterwards?
She did. She was quite upset about it, understandably, and just kept saying, but why? Why did he murder my grandma? And I'd say, as honest as I could be, I don't know. I know part of the story, but I'm not going to tell her that part of the story yet. And I said, it's really sad, isn't it? And I'm really angry. And it's why I cry a lot, actually, one of the reasons. I'm sorry that you didn't hear it from me. I was always going to tell you, but I wanted you to have your innocence for a bit longer. And I would have told you when you're older, because that was important to me, that I knew that she could talk to me about things, because she didn't actually tell me right away when he told her. She waited a couple of days. She must have been kind of processing it. So she kind of knows now. Oh, that's what we're talking about, jail. So, it was her idea to go and see him. And then we came here for promoting my book, and she again said, are we going to visit my grandfather while we're here? And I'm like, oh, yeah, he's in a Sydney jail. And I hadn't even thought of him. It's interesting it's on her radar. And I was like, no, not this time, darling, but interesting that you're aware of that. Yeah.
It is. You work with raising money for a women's community centre.
I have a little bit, yes.
Your mother's story is one of domestic violence, and ultimately she lost her life to domestic violence. When I listened to the podcast, what struck me so much is the progress we've made in our understanding of domestic violence and things like coercive control and financial control and emotional abuse. Have you found any solace in speaking to other victims and, you know, women who've perhaps experienced something similar in the realm of what you have?
I haven't, no. I mean, I haven't sought solace in that way yet. I do feel I would love to at least play some small part in helping to improve that situation for others, in honouring my mum in that way. I have hopes that things are changing, even though at the moment it's at an all-time high. But I also see a big change in mindsets of the generations, and I do have hope that that will bring change to dynamics in relationships and power and mutual respect and the awareness of what abuse is. And I can see a lot of young women going, you know, I wouldn't put up with that bullshit, you know, and not saying that these women that were in those situations put up with it or felt they had a choice. It was, I think, in those days too, like of my mother's days, it was probably more normal for the man to have more control over some of those things. Whereas,
well, it was called a domestic, wasn't it? I mean, and now at least it's called domestic violence, but it used to be seen as just something that was between a man and his wife.
And you don't air your dirty laundry.
Yeah, exactly. What's your relationship with your mum like today?
It's my mum.
Yeah.
I feel like it's evolving from more trauma and grief and triggers into, and, you know, I think the book is part of that, and the trial and everything is all part of the process. And I think that will always be there. There'll always be some grief that I don't have a mum and my daughter doesn't have a grandmother and that she was taken from us so tragically. What I noticed was when I looked at a photo of her, I think it was Mother's Day or something like that, where I used to always just break down and bawl my eyes out. I actually smiled and I went, oh, that's different. And that was what I was hoping for, that we can evolve into sort of celebrating her life, not just grieving it.
Oh, it can't have been easy sitting down and having that conversation. I really appreciate Shanelle's courage in doing that and her willingness to open up about something that is so deeply upsetting and so personal and so private and yet so public. She's written a book called My Mother's Eyes, as you heard her refer to in the podcast, and she asked her 9-year-old daughter if she had anything to say to her Nana Lynn, and I'm just going to play you, before we go, a tiny bit from the audiobook version of My Mother's Eyes. Here's the voice of Lynette Dawson's granddaughter, who she never got to meet.
Hi, special grandma in heaven. I always see you as a butterfly, and every time I do, I send my love. You would be so proud of me, Grandma, and you're probably right here with me now. Love you.
And I know there'll be a lot of people listening who are big fans of Hedley Thomas. I've interviewed him on this show before. He's an extraordinary man. He's done an extraordinary thing by all the years he's devoted and all the work he's devoted into this case. If you want to hear more from him, he also has a book out, and we've interviewed him on our True Crime Conversations podcast. We will put a link to that conversation in the show notes. Thank you for listening to this very special episode of No Filter. What a privilege it is to get to sit down and have these conversations. The executive producer of No Filter is Kimberly Bradish, with sound production by Maddie Joannou. I'm Mia Friedman, and thanks for having me in your ears.